Welcome to another episode of Get Started Investing, a podcast where we answer all of your money and investing questions. If you've just joined us for the first time, a huge welcome to the community. We do recommend that you scroll up and start at episode 1 if you're looking for a series on how to get started in the stock market. Otherwise, we have an awesome episode for you to crack in with us today. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you?
I'm very good, Bryce. Very excited for this episode and excited for this series. Because over the next 4 weeks, we are doing an end of financial year portfolio and financial health checklist.
Yes.
This time of year is a time where you sort of look at your finances, you feel like your tax return.
Hope for a good tax return.
Yeah, but we also think it's a good point to just stop and reflect on the year that was and say, how am I going? And more importantly, probably, is my current financial setup aligned with what I'm trying to achieve, like with my goals?
Yes.
And so that's really over this episode and the next 3 episodes. We're really going to go step by step and give you a checklist every episode to cover off a different part of your portfolio.
So over the next 4 episodes, we're going to be covering off our goals and our portfolio construction. We're going to be looking at our overall strategy and what we've got in place for the next 12 months, doing a deep dive on our fees, and then closing out with a review of our superannuation. So 4 big pillars to cover off over the next 4 weeks. And it is all thanks to Superhero. We want to give them a big shout out for supporting this series. Superhero has Australia's happiest investors, awarded CanStar's Most Satisfied Customers Award in 2023 for online share trading. They're feature-packed for a fraction of the cost, including $2 brokerage for trades up to $20,000.
Get access to award-winning features and amazing value from the get-go. Get invested. Trade for $2 with Superhero.
It is worth noting that Superhero does not provide financial advice, and you should consider whether this product is right for you. $2 brokerage is for trades up to $20,000 in the relevant currency. T's and C's do apply, and you can read them or download the Superhero app at superhero.com.au.
Now, Bryce, here is our first episode and our first checklist. We're covering off goals and portfolio construction. And really what we want to get out of this episode is, what are our goals? What are our financial goals? And then looking back over the past year, has our money decisions, call it, aligned with those goals? So we've got 5 questions in this episode. Number 1, how much did I contribute to my investing and savings goals this year? Number 2, is my emergency fund adequate? Is it actually 3 to 6 months of living expenses? 3, how am I progressing towards my goals?
Yep.
4, what's my asset allocation? Does it align with those goals? And then 5, how do I want to rebalance my portfolio?
Some great questions there. Looking forward to understanding a bit more about each other as we go through this.
Oh yeah, that we haven't disclosed that, which is we're going to bring this to life and actually answer these questions ourselves with examples from our own portfolio.
Yes, this isn't high level. This is deep level.
This is our actual end of financial year checklist.
So if you've been listening to us for the last 7 years and really wondered what goes on behind closed doors, this is the series for you.
Far less than you imagine.
This is the series for you. You're going to be very underwhelmed. But I think you'll find out that we certainly practice what we preach. At least I hope that comes across.
Yeah. Well, I'm intrigued about how you're going.
So the first question we want to answer is, how much did I contribute to my investing and savings goals this year?
Yeah. So let's start by looking at how much we actually contributed. Now, I'm not going to ask for a dollar amount.
Yeah.
You know, the way to do this for everyone and for us in this episode is, what percentage did we save or invest? And really a percentage of our after-tax salary, I think, is the thing we want to look at. So what was your saving and investing rate?
So my saving and investing rate was 20%.
Okay.
Yeah. Now that was with a holiday to Europe where that was expensive and I bought a house.
Now,
so it's less than I have on my spreadsheet, but I'm happy with that.
But here's the thing, before you spent that money on the house and the European holiday, did the money that you saved for those things count towards your savings rate?
No. So this is off a platform I use, Pocketsmith. Yep. So it's completely accounted for, all cash in, all cash out.
Okay, so you actually saved more than that, and then like you blew a bunch of it.
Yes,
and then,
yeah. My savings rate on paper is higher than that, But you're right. If I look at money in, money out, there was a lot of outflow in the last 12 months.
Yeah. Okay, nice. That's a good nuance.
Yeah.
Nice. So I was 22%, but that included money that I saved for the deposit because Alice and I bought an apartment in the last financial year.
Yeah.
And so that money that I saved, I factored that into my savings rate. Obviously, that is no longer savings.
Yeah.
That is now the bank's income.
Yes.
Yeah.
We want to stop here. We don't necessarily have a figure here that is right or wrong. We should say that this is just what has been for our portfolio.
Yeah.
And don't sit there and think that you need to be any more or less than that. This is a very individual rate. And I think the point is where you can save, obviously, but do this exercise if you haven't done it already.
The value is, number one, in actually knowing.
Yeah.
And then number two, trying to compete against yourself.
Yeah.
So whatever you did in this financial year, can you get a higher rate of savings and investing the next year? Because as we know, those small differences year after year really can compound into really meaningful differences over time. So I guess the other question, Bryce, and I asked this to you knowing what your answer is going to be, was that what you expected in terms of saving and investing rate?
I was actually pretty happy with that given the year I had.
Okay. The reason I said I knew what the answer was be, I thought you'd have spreadsheets that like track
Well,
it
as I
all.
said, yes, it's less than I thought it would be as a number, because on paper, as I said, my spreadsheets, I'm probably putting closer to 30%, but it's actually a little bit, I'm putting more than that, but I can understand why it is that number.
Yeah.
Nice. What about you?
It was as expected.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. Well, because I set up my finances, I try and automate them as much as possible. And this is a theme that will come throughout this series, automating. But I sort of know that every time I get paid, there's a certain amount of money that goes to investing accounts and goes to a savings account. And then I try not to pull that money out.
Yeah.
So and I knew that I hadn't really pulled any meaningful amount out except for the house deposit. So I kind of knew where I was at.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing we want to check in our health checklist, our financial checklist. How much did we actually invest and save over the last year? The next question is the one that every finance expert agrees is a really important part of your financial setup, having an emergency fund. And it's all good and well to have an emergency fund, but as we get to the end of the financial year, the question is it adequate? Now, the rule of thumb with an emergency fund is 3 to 6 months of expenses is kind of the sweet spot. So the question is, does your emergency fund actually have 3 to 6 months of expenses?
Great question.
Now, do we want to talk actual numbers here?
I'm happy to. Yeah.
So let's start. What's your emergency fund balance?
So my emergency fund balance at the moment is 22,000.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Is that for you and Harriet or just you?
No, hers is 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
but
separate
now,
emergency funds.
Well, I did this for just through my lens. We have them sitting together.
Okay.
And so, knowing that full well, if she needs it or I need it, that is the...
Yeah.
But when I have done the numbers here of what is the... I'm not trying to cover her costs. You know what I mean?
Even though you're married.
Well, I mean, for I'm not gonna if we're both out of action, of course. But if she's still earning an income and I'm not, she can pay her phone bill.
True.
She can pay for her those things. But obviously mortgage and whatnot.
Okay. All right. Well, my emergency fund balance is literally half of what you have, so I'm feeling quite inadequate now.
Okay.
So I'm at 11.
Okay. This was interesting to me, though. I'm interested to know what you factor into your emergency fund, because when we're saying it needs to cover X amount of months, where do you draw the line on what you still want to be covering from an expenses point of view? And what I'm trying to get at here is, do you still want to be investing if you're off for those 3 months? And does your emergency fund cover your DCA?
So
when
I think about emergency fund, it's what are the hard costs that I would need to cover? So adding money to my savings, adding money to my emergency fund, adding money to investing, not relevant at that time. For me, it's paying for housing. So the mortgage, previously it was rent, and like just the day-to-day expenses, bills, food, all that stuff. So, yeah, that's how I think about it.
Nice. And so where
You,
does...
and what? But you think about investing?
No. That's where I draw the line.
Okay.
Yeah. That would be awesome.
Jeez,
But then...
your lifestyle must be much more lavish than
So
mine.
that will cover... That's just on 4 months, yeah.
Okay.
I'm at just under $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that includes like golf membership and all those things that have to be paid. Yeah.
So this really leads into the next question, which is, does it actually cover 3 to 6 months of living expenses? And I get the sense from you there that it does.
Well, so what I realized was I got it to a point a while ago where I had it at 6 months, which is, but what I haven't actually done, and this has been a good exercise, I haven't factored in the mortgage.
Okay.
And so now it's gone closer to 4. I'm like, if I want to get it up to 6, and the reason I'm saying 6 is because we're self-employed, and generally speaking, you want to probably be on the more conservative side.
Yeah.
And so I probably need to actually start putting a little bit more in to bump it up a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're really taking my answers, because I did the review. What am I actually spending in a month, or the average month over the last year? And mine is inadequate. Now, and similar to you, mortgage was the big change this year, going from paying rent to paying mortgage. 3 months for me is probably more like 16 now.
Yeah.
So, damn mortgage.
I know.
So for me, mine is inadequate. And so a financial goal for the next year is to keep bumping that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've covered off investing and savings goals, emergency funds. The next one, Ren, is number 3. How am I actually progressing towards the goals that I set out at the start of the year?
Yeah.
So we want to just check if our financial goals are still correct.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't really sit down and say that I had specific goals, so to speak. I wanted to buy a house.
Yep.
That was the first priority.
Done that.
And I want to consistently invest into a core portfolio. Those are probably the 2 main, and then ensure that I have an emergency fund, which in this instance is a little inadequate. But those were probably my 2. I didn't have necessarily a figure in mind. I want savings by the end of the year. What about yourself?
Yeah, look, my financial goals are pretty straightforward, similar to you. Really, mortgage and getting on top of that, and then just accumulating wealth and contributing a meaningful percentage of my salary to long-term investing. You know, like Alice and I have, I guess, sort of like more medium-term goals, but for me, it's kind of like just do everything I can to accumulate while I'm in that sweet spot of, you know, double income, no kids, you know, can accumulate.
Yeah.
So thinking about those goals, they still hold for me. They were the same last year. I'd hazard a guess they're going to be the same next year as well.
Yeah. So other things to think about when you're talking about progressing towards your goals, I think the first thing is don't set goals if you're trying to pay off debt.
No, the goal is to pay off debt.
True. What I meant by that is don't say you want to invest 10 grand this year if you have 10 grand on your credit card that you need to pay off. Like, probably makes more sense to try and clear that debt. So have the goal of paying off debt. In your situation, was there, other than mortgages, obviously, is there any debt to clear?
No.
Nice.
No. I've long moved on from credit cards and get jealous every time people start paying for things on points, but that hasn't motivated me to go back into that.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. Likewise, in my situation, no debt. Did get a credit card for the overseas trip to get the points, which I think was worth it.
Okay.
But fast closed that off and no longer have one. But yeah, look at things like consolidating and refinancing if the goal is to pay off debt and pay it off as fast as possible.
The other thing that we don't really talk about with goals is your super on track? And that's probably a conversation that's going to happen more and more in our lives. But you can start projecting forward where your super is now and what that will mean at retirement. Now, Money Smart have a superannuation calculator that you can put your current super balance, what you get paid, all that stuff in, or you can just use their compound interest calculator if you want a simpler look at it. I did this exercise and I feel like I'm on track with my super. It's like decades away, but you sort of plug it in and you're like, yeah. So I don't feel like I need to contribute more to like catch up or anything like that. I mean, it wouldn't hurt, but for me, it's like there's not a burning platform where I want to make that a specific financial goal.
Yeah. We'll chat about super in episode 4. But yeah, I'm the same. Just on the tracking towards goals, and this is a conversation we've had with Harriet. Like, we've looked at our spending over the last 12 months, and you can obviously see pockets of inflation: groceries, transport, housing. And so where we set our budget 12, 18 months ago and what we wanted to put towards our savings, where I thought we would be, like we thought we were having a holiday coming up, going to Bali or whatever, we expected to have X amount in the account by then. But with the increase in cost of living, and I'm sure a lot of people are experiencing this, and then, we're in wedding season and sort of all those sorts of things where you're having to take a little bit out of savings here and there. It can be sometimes a bit deflating getting to and looking at where you thought you would be versus where you are now. And I think just psychologically reminding yourself that, we're in a period at the moment where it's tricky.
Yeah.
And acknowledging that if you're putting some away, the behavior is the main thing, and tracking it is absolutely important.
Yeah, 100%. Well, look, I think that's a good point to take a break. On the other side of the break, we're going to talk about actually reviewing our portfolios, so reviewing our asset allocation and thinking about how we rebalance our investing portfolios. But before then, we want to say a big thanks to Superhero for supporting the Winter Series.
So Equity Mates, if you are looking to make the most of your investments without breaking the bank, you need to check out Superhero. It's been awarded Australia's best value online share trading platform, offering plenty of features at a fraction of the cost.
As you know, we hate fees here at Equity Mates because they eat away at your returns. So keeping brokerage as low as possible is important, especially if you're regularly investing into a core portfolio.
With Superhero, you can trade ASX and Wall Street stocks and ETFs with $2 brokerage. Are you ready to get started?
Get invested, trade for $2 with Superhero today.
$2 brokerage is for trades up to $20,000 and in the relevant currency. T's and C's do apply, and you can read them or download the Superhero app at superhero.com.au.
Welcome back to Equity Mates. Today we are in episode 1 of our 4-part series on our end of financial year financial health check. A lot of financial in that. We're really looking at our goals and our portfolio construction, and are those two things in alignment? Do those two things need to change? Before the break, we spoke about our emergency fund, always an important place to start, how much we'd actually invested or saved in the past year, and how we're progressing towards our goals. Now we want to get down into the nitty-gritty of our portfolios themselves.
Yep.
Does our asset allocation, what we're investing in, align with our goals?
Okay.
So Bryce, talk to me about your portfolio. Given your goals are like general wealth accumulation.
Get rich.
Get rich or die trying.
Get rich quick. Get rich quick. So I'm 100% crypto. No kidding.
Get poor quick, depending on the time of the cycle.
Yeah, my goal is to have a portfolio that delivers primarily capital growth over a long period of time. At this point in my life, I'm not looking for my portfolio to spit out large amounts of income at this point in time. So for that to happen, I want to be exposed to as much equities as possible. Yep. I'm not looking for too many defensive assets. So my portfolio is 84% stocks, 7% crypto, 9% cash.
Okay.
So that's my portfolio, and I can go into the breakdown of that in a moment, but I think from a high level, I'm pretty happy with how that reflects my goals. And I'll go into what the breakdown of those stocks are, but how does that compare to yours?
So similar. I'm basically all stocks and crypto. My portfolio is kind of like a third core, passive indexes, a bit less than a third active managers, and then a third individual stocks, and then the remainder in crypto.
Yeah, okay, nice. So I think importantly as well, I just want to talk about the breakdown of my core because I found this quite interesting. So I invest in 4 ETFs.
Yep.
My core, 41% is in US, 31% Australia, and then Europe and Asia, both 14% each.
Okay.
Now, the reason for this, I think, is because I added the Europe and Asia core elements much later
Yeah.
to the US and AUD, but I'm now contributing equal amounts to all of them.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about rebalancing, but yeah, I've just got a heavy weight towards US.
Yep.
Then throughout my direct investments, so this is outside of my core, 15% US, 10% Australia, 8% thematic, so a bit of everything, and then 6% in managed funds. So I think overall I'm pretty happy with this.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I'd rather be overweight US than overweight Europe at this point. That's for sure.
Yeah, so I think, look, that question 4, how does our asset allocation align with our goals? I think we can both say broadly it does align. So there's nothing major that needs to change. This really leads to the final question, which is around rebalancing. And this is more relevant if the answer to question 4 is it's not aligned with my goals. The classic example of this would be, you know, my goal is to grow wealth over the long term, but my asset allocation is a lot in cash or a lot in, like, you know,
dividend stocks.
Savings accounts. Yeah. Well, yeah, dividend stocks is probably less.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So the question is, how do we rebalance? And I think your example is probably a good one there because you've got these 4 ETFs, you're contributing equal amounts to them, and they're out of whack. Now, that's not necessarily a problem, and I think there's a pretty strong case that actually really isn't a problem for you. But if you thought it was a problem, there's really two choices that you have when it comes to rebalancing. The first is doing it slowly over time. So you could contribute from your salary, what you invest, you could contribute more to those parts of your portfolio that have less, so the Asia and the Europe ETF, and you could slowly build them up faster than you're building the US and Australia until they're all sort of aligned. Or there's the quick way, which is you sell some US and you sell some Australia and you use that to buy. Now, are you thinking about rebalancing? And if you are rebalancing, which way are you thinking about doing it?
If I were to do it, I would probably do it over time.
Yep.
Yeah. The only reason is because I don't want to sell out of any of my US or AUD positions, and 2 reasons for that. Keeping it in there for the next 40 years is going to be beneficial, and also tax implications. I'll probably have capital gains tax on selling it down. I think the other thing that you alluded to, though, is I'm actually okay with having overweight exposure to the US. Arguably, AUD should probably be closer to Europe and Asia, but it's, again, just the nature of how I've built the portfolio. But if I were to do it, yeah, I would just actually up what I'm contributing to Europe and Asia.
Yeah. I think for most people in most situations, like, unless you're talking like stupidly large amounts of money, you know, like enough money that if something went wrong with some of your biggest positions, it would be like seriously detrimental to your financial health or your mental health. Rebalancing over time makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I would say, having done this and thinking about rebalancing, what I've noticed I've done more over the last 12 months than I probably have ever is actually selling parts of my portfolio to invest in new opportunities rather than waiting for new capital. And I think that's because, you know, mortgages and cost of living, like the available funds outside of my core portfolio is less. And also I think I've come to realize that just holding on to positions that I had since uni days is kind of pointless. Yeah. And like, sure, if there's a loss, I sell it at a loss. I'm also happy to take a capital gain if I think there's better opportunities out there. So just looking at my behavior, I've probably been more active in trimming down positions. Yeah.
So I think that's a good tease for the next episode. This episode's been a lot of looking back on the year that was, how our portfolio is set up, what our habits have been over the last year. In the next episode, we want to talk about the year going forward and the investing strategy, which will include, as you've alluded to there, selling some of your losers. So let's
front run it.
Huh?
I front ran it.
You did, but that's all good. That's all good. We're looking forward to this next episode. Now, just to recap before we go, the questions that you can take away and do for your own portfolio, there were 5 in this episode. How much did I contribute to my investing and savings this year or the year just gone? Is my emergency fund adequate? Does it actually cover 3 to 6 months of expenses? What are my goals and how am I progressing towards them? Does my asset allocation align with my goals? And then finally, if it doesn't, how am I going to rebalance my portfolio?
Awesome. Some great foundations there to kick off. And join us for next episode. As Ren said, we're going to be looking at actually what our investing strategy is going into the next year. But a massive thank you to Superhero as we close out this episode for making the winter series possible. Trusted by us and 300,000 customers and winner of Money Mag's best value share trading platform 3 years in a row, Superhero offers you a range of features and amazing value no matter where you are on your journey.
Get invested, trade for $2 with Superhero. $2 brokerage is for trades up to $20,000 and in the relevant currency. T's and C's do apply, and you can read them or download the Superhero app at superhero.com.au.